Great day, learners. It's me again, Miss Bethel. So I have already given to you the learning modules. Now I am sharing to you a lecture video about this topic, sample techniques and sample size. But I am assuming that you already have prior knowledge, ample knowledge about this topic since this has been discussed in your lecture in statistics. So let's get started. I hope you're ready and you are watching this video right now. So we talk about sampling techniques and sample. So we are actually referring to population first, then we have here the sample. So please recall that when we talk about a population, we are trying to refer to a group of things or a group of people or a group of individuals that we want to use or we want to have because we need to draw information about. It's actually a full set of all the possible unit of analysis. So that's a population. And it is actually called as the universe of observations because you will be using the entire group of things or the entire group of people or individuals or organisms. Meanwhile, a sample here is a part of this population, or it's actually a segment of the population that we take out because we need to use this to examine and draw our conclusion from. So we call this as a representative unit of our target population. So it is actually called as subject or respondents of the study. So I hope that's already clear with you. So if this is our population of the entire universe or the entire world, then we wanted to conduct a study. Remember, it's very hard for us to use the entire population. So we could actually use the sample. We could take out a representative or collect or draw a representative of the population. And we call that as the sample. Now, what's sampling? So sampling, as you know, it's so cliche. It's a method of getting a small but representative cross-section of the population. And in sampling, we need not to simply get or take out a sample, but we need to have different techniques in order for us to make sure that the samples that we use are actually representative, the exact representative of the population. For us to say that even if we failed to use the population and we only use the sample, then our conclusions, our validations are reliable, are true, or authentic. So in this video, we will be looking at the different methods of obtaining our samples. So let's start with this one. When we talk about the population, we could have a sample or a census. So in a census, we assume that there is no error. It's actually a perfect generalization. So, di ba, in the Philippine setting, kailan ba nagsisensus? Then, National Statistics Office are actually doing a census, di ba? Pumupunta sila kada bahay. Yun yung ginagawa nila for them to gather what? The population of the Philippines. That's one. Meanwhile, in sample, we assume that we will be having, of course, a sampling error or a bias. That's why we have the margin of error. And we need to know also the accuracy of the generalization. And it depends on sample size and lack of bias. Kaya nga meron tayong confidence level for us to see that even if we constantly repeat the same procedure or the same study or the same research or the same technique, 99% or 95% or 90% perhaps, the result would give us the value or the the area where the true mean lies, right? And another thing, when we talk about sample, we could actually classify the sample as probability sample, quasi-probability sample, and non-probability sample. So when we talk about probability sampling, we need to consider the presence of a sampling error. For quasi-probability sample, of course, sampling error possible, sample bias as well. And for non-probability sample, there is a sampling error and a probable sample bias. So these are actually examples of the three classifications of a sample. Simple random sampling, stratified or representative quota. We also have systematic random and multistage for quasi-probability sample, and convenience cluster purposive or and representative quota for non-probability sample. So when we talk about probability sampling, we expect that it is more precise, more objective, and unbiased. When we talk about being unbiased, it means every member of the population has an equal likelihood or chance to be selected or chosen. That's probability sample. Meanwhile, probability sample is a bit rough because it comes with a bias and in a sample error. So as the term itself, non-probability, it means it doesn't involve random process of selecting participants or sample. Kaya nga diba, it's term convenience, cluster, or purposive kasi for convenience lang. So kung ako sa researcher, kung sinong lang yung or ano lang yung pinakamalapit sa akin, yun yung pipiliin ko. Quote unquote, there is bias. For quasi-probability sample, we would expect that this actually produce results that approximate the SRS, or it comes from a systematic random sample. So it still contains a sample bias. Now, first, let's look at what is bias sample all about. So this occurs when one or more parts of the population are actually favored over the others. Again, there is no randomization. Kaya nga tinatawag siya na bias sample or sampling. So there are actually two types of a bias sample. First, we have this convenience sample. Then we also have this voluntary response sample. So let's try to take a look on what are the sampling techniques all about. Convenience. So makikita natin dito sa aking illustration, gumagamit po ako ng boxes or ng rectangles. So assuming that this entire object here or figure here is a population and those in green are part of the sample size. Ibig sabihin po, if I am the researcher and I am located here, at this portion here, so ito lang yung pinaka-convenient sa akin. Ito yung pinaka-accessible sa akin. Kaya nga tinatawag siya na convenience sample because it only includes people who are easy to reach. Quote-unquote, it is a bias sample. So kunwari, ito si researcher. Researcher would select a population and then you would ask, how much do you weigh? Or what is your weight? And then, ang nangyari, ito lang yung part ng population na pinakamalapit kay researcher. Siguro itong mga nasa bandang dito, napakalayo na, or siguro kailangan pa tumawid ng sapa, or pumunta pa ng bukid, or mahirap na kasi ang duration ng time is only 3 months, or only 2 months, or only 1 month, or even weeks. So what is more convenient for the researcher? Yun yung pipiliin niya as part of the sample. So itong nahagip ng half circle na ito yung magiging part ng kanyang sample at sila yung mapipili. Okay, that's why it's called convenience sample. We also have voluntary response sample. So for voluntary response sample, it consists of people that have chosen to include themselves. So there is voluntary, the term voluntary, there is willingness. So ang mangyayari, the researcher would let people come to him. Diba? Ang saya. So bale, kung ano yung topic, kung sino yung interested, sila yung magiging part ng ating sample. This is a bias sample since only those people with a strong interest to the survey will be included in the sample or will be representative of the population. So sila lang yung ine-expect natin na more likely magre-respond doon sa ating survey. Whereas those people na hindi sila interested, of course, wala silang pake. They would not even care about the topic or the research. So itong figure na ito ang aking ginamit. Kunwari, this is actually the entire population and those with green are the respondents who are willing because they are interested with the survey or the research. So, kunwari naman, ito si researcher. Tapos may population. So, magtatanong siya, on a scale of 1 to 5, how willing are you to be vaccinated? Tapos, yung mga people na nasa puti, okay, sila yung willing kasi ito, senior citizen na sila, yung malalaki. Ito naman yung mga past 18 years old na. So, willing din sila magpa-vaccine. Or those people na working. So, kailangan nilang ma-vaccinate. While the others are not even interested. So, they will not be part of the sample. So, these are the people included in the sample because these are the only people na willing magpa-vaccinate. While the others, they're still doubtful kung effective ba ang vaccination. So, remember, a good sample is the one that is representative of the entire population. So, yung sinabi ko kanina na convenience at voluntary sample, do you think they're considered as a good sample? Yes, you're actually right. They are not considered as a good sample because they are not the representative of the entire population, the exact representative. Since for convenience, yun lang yung pinaka-accessible or pinaka-malapit or easy to reach kay researcher. For voluntary response, sila lang yung mga tao or sila lang yung mga respondents na willingly, okay, nag-volunteer kasi interested sila sa topic. Kunwari, what if the topic is about alcoholism? What if the topic is about those birth moms? Okay, those birth moms who are selling their child, their newborn child. Do you think there will be a lot of women na mag-volunteer to be part of the survey? Of course, none all of them or not all of them. It's because it's a very sensitive or confidential matter. Okay? That's why they are considered as a biased sample. And another thing, a good sample gives each thing or each individual or organism the equal chance or likelihood to be chosen or selected. That's why when we talk about good sample, we are actually referring to a or an unbiased sample. One, again, that is a representative of the entire population and gives each unit or thing or organism or human entity or individual the equal chance of being selected. So talking about unbiased sample, it is a representative. It's free from bias and errors. There's no substitution and incompleteness. And it is considered as an appropriate sample size. Okay? So now, if there is a group of staff toys and merong isang bata. So probably sa staff toy na ito, magsasabi, please pick me. I'm so pickable. No? I'm so huggable. I must be chosen. Okay. Tapos sabi naman ng bata, no, favorites. Pwede ko kayong gamitin lahat. Ito Monday, ito Tuesday, ito ganito. There is randomization. Okay. That's why it's called unbiased sample or sampling. So one example of an unbiased sample is what we call a simple random sampling or commonly known as an SRS. So it's considered as the most basic type of sampling. Again, it's also known as an SRS. And what you're going to do with this is you simply select units from the list by using truly random process like random number table, or there is a computer program so that every entry on the list has exactly the same probability of being chosen. So, kunwari, the entire figure here is our entire population. So, ito yung mga napili by randomization, yung nasa yellow. Sila yung magiging part ng ating sample. So, how do we do as a sampling technique with SRS? So, meaning, we have the entire population here. Again po, each individual has an equal chance to be surveyed or included in the sample. So kunwari sa researcher nagsabi, how much do you weigh in kilograms? And then you do a simple SRS. So clear example of a simple SRS is names on the hut. Kunwari, ito yung ating hut. Then there are, yung nasa population na ito, lahat ng mga pangalan nila ay makikita natin sa loob ng hut. Okay? Then, selecting any of them. Mari bubunot. Okay, that's an SRS. Okay. So, kunwari, the groupings, kung nag-grupo kayo sa school nyo, pag meron kayong activities, so, nandun lahat ang mga names ng estudyante. Tapos, sinabi ni Mom, lahat ng mapipili ko, itong first 5, ito yung group 1. Okay, that's a simple random sampling. That's an SRS. So, for our keys, our example here, kunwari, we will be selecting sample size of 6. So, out of all the names inside the hat, we will only draw 6 papers or 6 names. Kunwari, ito yung mga napili nating pangalan. Pumunot ka na, tapos tinignan mo na yung mga pangalan nila. So, kunwari, ang nabunot na si Luffy, si Zoro, si Nami, si Natsu, si Urza, at saka si Lucy. So, sila yung tatanungin kung ano ba yung kanilang mga timbang. So, sila yung napili natin na part ng ating sample size. So, si Luffy, si Zoro, yung mapipili natin na included ng ating sample. Okay, by doing SRS. Another thing, we call this as stratified random sampling. So, this is a method of sampling that involves the division of a population into smaller subgroups known as strata. So, this is actually one stratum, another stratum, and the third stratum. So the entire population is divided into strata or stratum. So and in each stratum, doon tayo magsaselect ng ating part ng sample. So sa first stratum, ito yung napili. Sa second stratum, ito yung napili. At saka sa last stratum, yun yung napili. Again, merong mga subgroups known as strata. So kunwari, this is the entire population. So the first thing to do is we need to take the population. Of course, the population is very diverse. There are a lot of variations in the population. That's the reality. So we need to divide the population into strata, meaning a group of similar people or groups of similar people or similar individual or similar things. You would notice kanina na yung ating entire population ay very diverse. So, paano natin sila i-group into strata or stratum? Kunwari, ang ating gagawin ay according to color. So, nagrupo na. Ito yung ating stratum 1, the second stratum, and the third stratum. So, similar na po sila. So, ano ba yung mga real-life experience ng stratified random sampling? Kunwari, sa Philippine population, kumuha ka ng kung gusto mong kumuha ng sample ng mga taong na-vaccinate na. So, ano yung gagawin mo? So, pwede mong i-divide yung Philippine population according to region. So, yung region 1, region 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, and so on. Sila yung magiging stratum. Each stratum. So, sila yung buong strata. Okay? Or in a company. So, gusto mong malaman sa kumpanya kung sino ba yung mga tao na tapos na magbayad ng kanilang insurance. So, pwede mong i-divide yung employees according to their age number. So, yung mga tao na 24 to 28, 29 to 32, 33 to 34, 35 to 38, so on and so forth. So, yun yung magiging strata mo. So, dito sa ating example ngayon, so ito po yung ginagamit ko. Okay? Follow lang. Okay? Bakit ko po sinasabi yung mga specific example? Kasi most of you would complain that the learning videos are, not, hindi naman most, some lang, na hindi daw, wala daw talagang part ng learning videos na lumabas sa exam. So, I really have a retake of this part, for you to know na basic po yung binibigay ko. I'm giving you the principle, the theory. If you know the theory, if you know the principle behind, then in real life experience or scenario, you would identify na ito pala yung stratified, ito pala yung simple. Kunwari, ang ginamit ko dito, colors lang. Tapos sa exam, magtatanong ako na, okay, so what kind of sampling technique are you going to use if in a company there was a survey about uh, people na willing magpa-vaccinate, tapos dinivide mo yung employees into different groups based on their age bracket, and in each group, so nag-take ka ng, kumuha ka ng sample, tapos hindi mo na alam kasi diniscuss ni ma'am. I-diniscuss ko naman po, ginamit ko lang po kulay ng tao. If naintindihan niyo po yung concept, then for sure you could access or you could answer the questions properly. Because sa panonood po ng ating video, kailangan po nating intindihin. Hindi lang po manood ng manood. Okay? We need to understand. Maybe there's something wrong, okay, with our mood when we watch the video. But anyway, so let's proceed. So meron na po tayong iisang stratum dito, stratum. So this is our strata. So in each stratum, ito na yon, gagawa tayo ng SRS or Simple Random Sampling. Ibig sabihin po, yung SRS, kaya siya tinatawag na most basic. Kasi in other sampling techniques, it can be used. Okay? So sa stratified, ito yung ating stratum 1, stratum 2, stratum 3. Gagawa tayo ng SRS in each stratum. So lahat ng pangalan ng mga individuals na nasa stratum na ito, ilalagay natin sa hat. Lahat ng pangalan ng mga individuals na nasa stratum na ito, another hat. And lahat ng pangalan ng mga individuals na nasa stratum na ito, blue, another hat naman. Now, kuha po tayo ng ating mga samples from each stratum. So, alam po natin na 6 po yung ating gustong sample size. So, kukuha tayo ng tigda-dalawang sample size galing sa iisang stratum. Okay? So, ngayon, ito na po ang ating sample size from this stratum, the second sample size from another stratum, and the third sample size from this stratum to have a total of 6 sample size. Again po, babalikan natin. Take a population, create strata, or a group of similar people. Take an SRS in each stratum. You know na 6 yung kailangan mo. So, ang gagawin natin, i-divide natin into 3 kasi meron tayong 3 stratum or 3 strata in totality. So, kukuha tayo ng tigda-dalawa. I-combine natin. So, ito na yung ating combination. Tapos, ito na yung mga names ng people, ito na yung mga tao na ating gagamitin as part of our sample size. Take 2 sample size from each stratum. Clear po? I hope it's clear. Okay. So now, a stratified sampling is good for making sure that whoever is administering the sample gets in contact with each kind of group. Right? So, si researcher, kailangan niyang i-meet itong mga tao na nasa stratum na ito. I-meet niya din itong mga tao nasa stratum na ito. At the third stratum, the researcher also needs to meet these individuals. That's it, right? So how about multi-stage sampling? Multi, meaning there are a lot of stages of sampling. Kasi nga, this multi-stage sampling, it uses a combination of 2 or more SRS. For multi-stage, in each level po, meron po tayong gagawin na SRS. So, in multi-stage sampling, as the name suggests, it means you need to go through a different stages to find where your sample comes from. So, kunwari, this is our entire population. First na ginawa natin is we have different groups, and then out of the different groups, we take and in selecting that group, we need to have an SRS. And out of that group, ang gagawin natin, doon naman tayo kukuha ng sample size through SRS again. So, here's the drill. Let us say we have 3 groups. So, stage 1, diba, alam natin na may 3 groups tayo. We need to select which group will be picked through SRS. Kunwari po ha, meron tayong 3 groups ng population. Kunwari, itong population na ito ay nasa barangay A. Dito naman barangay B. Dito naman barangay C. Okay, so pipili tayo kung tatlong barangay na ito ang ating kukunin ng sample. So, in selecting kung group 1 ba, barangay A ba, barangay B, or barangay C, ilalagay natin ang names ng tatlong barangay na yun inside the hat. Tapos, pipili tayo. Magpipick tayo. Diba, meron ng tatlo sa loob po ng hat. Tapos, yung napick natin ay group 1. Ibig sabihin po, ang kukunan lang natin ng sample ay yung mga population or individuals na nasa group 1. Ma'am, ano po yung gagawin ng group 2 at group 3? Hindi na po sila kasali. Bali, eliminated na po sila. Yun po ang first stage ng ating sampling technique. Ngayon naman, meron na tayong group 1 na-identify na natin na okay, hindi pala kasali yung barangay B at C, yung group 2 at 3. Si group 1 lang pala yung kasali. Now, let's have a stage 2 by doing another SRS in order for us to get 6 random people. Again po, stick po tayo sa ating example na 6 ang sample size. Now, lahat po ng pangalan ng nasa group 1 or barangay A ay ilalagay natin sa hat. Tapos, bubunot po tayo ng 6. Tapos, yung nabunot po natin ng 6, ito po yung part ng ating sample size. Again po, repeat po tayo again. In multi-stage random sampling, we go through different stages of SRS to get the actual size. Kung meron po tayong 5 groups or 5 population or 5 groups na lang para mas malinaw. Sa 5, kailangan natin pumili ng isa. Okay? So, pipili tayo, kunwari, ilagay natin ang list sa isang hat. Tapos yung nabunot natin ay 3. Ibig sabihin, yung 1, 2, 4, at 5, hindi na sila kasali. Si 3 lang. So, dahil si 3 ang kasali, gagawa na naman po tayo ng another round ng simple random sampling or SRS. Ilagay natin lahat ng names na nasa group 3. Tapos, bubunot po tayo kung ilan yung gusto nating sample size. Kunwari, 10. So, pick lang tayo ng 10. Pag napili natin yung 10, yun yung ating final sample size that will be included in the study or in the survey or in the research. That is multi-stage random sampling. Another thing po, I would like to point out that there are many ways to do a set of or a series of SRS. So instead of putting names in the hat, we could actually make use of using the random number table. I know you've learned about this already. So to do this, I will be demonstrating to you how to use the random number table. To do this, you need to label each member of the population with a number. So kunwari, meron po tayong 30 members ng ating population. Ito na po yung buong population. Tapos, kaya po iba-iba yung kulay. Ako ginanggituyo, no, para masabtan na to. Okay? So, advice is, you need to use 2 digits for each thing or each individual or each person. So, 01, 02, 03. So, no problem for 10 because it's a 2-digit number until you would reach. So, ma'am, what if 100 plus 2-digit? No, you could use 101 and then do the same, okay? I will be demonstrating to you how to use the random number table. So we have 30 people in the entire population. So we need to read the strings of numbers 2 digits at a time. Kasi nga, meron tayong hanggang 2 digits lang. Pero kung 3 digits na yung, pang 3 digits na yung number ng ating member ng population, then that's the time you could also use a 3-digit random number. Okay. So, hinati-hati po natin into 2. So, 13, 96, 27. Okay po ha? So, 13, 96, 27, 09, 92, 65, 17, 22, 80, and 53. So, meron bang 13? Of course, we have here 13. 96, wala. Kasi lagpas po siya sa 30, so skip. 27, so meron 27, so selected ka. Tapos 09, meron ding 09. Tapos 92, wala din. Kasi nga, di ba, lagpas. So 30, 65, wala din, so skip natin. 17, okay, meron po tayong 17, so you're chosen. Tapos 22, meron din po tayong 22. Tapos meron po tayong 80, wala po. 53, wala din po. 02, of course, meron po tayong 02. Assuming that our target sample size is 6, so meron na po tayong 6 randomly chosen people. So meron si respondent 13, respondent 27, respondent 09, respondent 17, respondent 22, at respondent 02. They are the people or persons or individuals or entities that will be part of our sample. So this is another way of doing an SRS. So silang anim po ang lucky individuals who were chosen to be part of the survey. Another thing po, aside from putting names inside the hat or using the table of random numbers, so there are a lot of computer generated, or you could have a list and then use the random number again. Kung hindi man lang po tayo gumagamit, kung wala po talagang individuals, na ito po, codes lang po 09. So, if the individuals po are named, so meron po si Linda Free, Mark Free, lagyan lang po natin sila ng number, tapos bubunot po tayo or gumamit po tayo ng random number. Okay? So, either bubunot, tapos titignan sa list, or random number, tapos titingin ulit sa list. So, ganun lang po. How about systematic random sampling? So, let's take a look on this sampling technique. So, with this, samples are again selected at random sampling point with a fixed periodic interval. So, when we talk about fixed periodic interval, we are actually trying to see that, okay, every 6, or every 12, or every 16, or every 8, ano ba yung sasabi ko? Ano ba yan? So, kunwari, nasa street ka, tapos nag-aabang ka ng jeep. Gusto mong matukoy kung sa mga jeep na yun, ilan ba yung, or sino ba yung may kumpletong documents when it comes to their driver's license and the likes. So, paano mo mapipili yung driver ng jeep na yun? So, yung sampling unit natin. Paano ba? So, you need to get a fixed periodic interval. Okay. Sa dinami-dami ba naman yung jeep na dumadaan? So, paano mo sasabi na, okay, yun yung pipiliin ko? Simple. Pwede mong sabihin, okay, every third na jeep. So, per second, ito, pangatlo na to. Ito yung jeep. So, pwedeng kausapin yung driver. Tapos yung pang-anim naman, 4, 5, 6. Tapos yung pang-9 naman. So, the interval is 3. So, to know that, let's talk about the nitty-gritty. So, first is we need to define the target population. Ano yung gusto mong population? And then, know the ideal sample size. So, assign the number to every member of the sample. Then, calculate sampling interval. So, to calculate the sampling interval, you need to know the population size and the desired sample size. So, for example, your desired sample size is 5. So, 5 lang. 5 lang na respondents, or 5 entities, or 5 tao, or 5 things. So, to get your desired sample size, kung alam mo na may 30, i-divide mo lang ang 30 doon sa desired sample size, which is 5. Ibig sabihin, every 6 na thing or object or tao or entity
yun yung magiging part ng iyong sample size. Tapos, another question, ma'am, paano ko masasabi na yun yung aking starting point sa aking interval? So, you need to choose between 1 and the sampling interval. Kunwari, your sampling interval is 6, di ba? Sa ating example. So, pipili ka lang kung saan ka ba mag-start. Sa 1, sa 2, sa 3, sa 4, sa 5, or sa 6. It's up to you. Then, repeat sampling interval to choose subsequent elements. So, kunwari, ito yung mga figure na ito. Alam natin na ito yung buong population. So, meron po tayong greens. Sa greens na ito, ito po yung part ng ating sample size. Alam po natin yung may interval po sila. So, this is our clear example. Let's have this. So, we have 30 individuals in the population. So, our required sample size is 5. So, we need to divide 30 over 5. The answer is 6. Ibig sabihin, every 6 po na individual ang ating gagamitin para maging part po ng ating sample. So, ito yung, kunwari nag-start ako sa 1. So, ito yung first, ito yung pang 6, di ba? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ibig sabihin, meron pa tayong 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So, meron pa tayong 5 na sample size. Yung ating pong interval ay 6. So, every 6 po na individual ang magiging part ng ating sample size. Kasi yung aking piniling starting point ay 1. Paano naman kung aking randomly pinili na starting point is 3? So, mag-start po ako kay 3. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Si 9 po ang pangalawa. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Si 15 po ang pangatlo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Si 21 ang pangatlo. Ay rather pang-apat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Si 27 ang pang-5. Again po, pag ang tanong, saan ba ako mag-start sa aking starting point or random starting point? It's between 1 up to our sampling interval, which is 6. So, between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Sa case po natin, example, so 1 po tayo ng start. So, here's po the formula to check if we have correctly picked our last sample. Alam natin, ang ating last sample ay si 25. Nakakita po natin dito. Si 25 po ang pang-main nating sample. Paano natin nilalaman na, okay, tama yung ginagawa mo, dapat mag-i-end ka sa 25 or the 25th. So, we need to use this formula. Random starting point plus the sampling interval. Okay, so n minus 1. So 1, which is our random starting point, plus 5, which is our sampling interval, minus 1 times 6. Okay, so 1 plus 4 times 6 is equals to 25. Yan po ang tamang pagkuha or tamang proseso ng pag-check kung tama ba yung pinili natin na sample size na pang-. Yun lang po. Thank you so much and be deeply blessed. Now, how are we gonna check if we have correctly picked our last sample? This is our formula. Random starting point plus the sample size minus 1 times the sampling interval. Alam natin yung ating n ay 5. So 1, which is the random starting point, plus 5, which is the sampling size, minus 1 times the sampling interval. So 1 plus 4 times 6 is equals to 25. Tama po. 25 po ang ating huling or last na na-pick natin na sample size. So how about cluster sampling? For cluster sampling naman, this is actually employed to study large populations that are geographically diverse. So this is the whole population. We need to create samples because some are located in this area, the others are in the other specific location. So first thing is we need to define the target population. And we need to divide the samples into cluster, which means cluster should have similar distribution of characteristics as distribution of population as a whole. Actually, it should be a representative again. And then randomly select cluster as your samples and collect data from chosen sample. So kunwari po, here's our scenario. You are interested to determine the average scientific skills of second-year college students in your city. Alam natin na ang dami-daming second-year college students. Okay, so technically, it's difficult for a researcher to obtain a list of second-year college students and employ SRS. So kunwari, ito yung buong college students ng second year. So practically, obtain a list of schools. Yun yung una mong gagawin in your city. and collect data from the subset of this. So in our scenario, we may cluster the students according to schools they attended. So kunwari, sa UCT, meron tayong 6 schools. So school A, B, C, D, E, F. So na-cluster natin, okay, ito yung mga second year students sa school A, ito yung second year students sa school B, second year students sa school C, second year students sa school D, E, at saka F. From this, we can randomly select clusters. Suppose we randomly select schools A, D, at saka F. Ma'am, paano po ni-randomly select? Okay. Paano ba? SRS. So, ilagay mo ang lahat ng pangalan ng schools in a hat, tapos bubunot ka. Or you could use random number. Okay. Then, from these 3 sample schools, ito yung si A, D, at saka si F, we compute for the required sample size using a sample calculator. And to do this, we need to use the Sloven's formula to obtain the appropriate sample size with respect to the population size. So, Sloven's formula to compute for this, sample size is equals to the population size divided by 1 plus the product of the population size and the squared margin of error. So that's it. Thank you everyone for watching. God bless us all.